Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Wisteria here. This is called Mrs. Ellis. Age is a strange thing. It distills personality into its essential essence. While some people mellow, maturing in wisdom, knowledge and patience, others become sour and resentful. Mrs. Ellis was one of the latter. Her husband died young before they had children, so she lived alone in a cottage, brewing up bitterness. The one joy Mrs. Ellis treasured was her well. It was fed by spring, and she guarded it jealously. The water from the well was pure, crystal clear, and sweet to drink. The problem was that everyone else knew about the spring, and people were always coming to her house and begging some of the water. They wouldn't leave her alone. People said that the water was medicinal. It would cure sore eyes and aid the digestion. Mrs. Ellis wouldn't give it away, but she did sell it in tiny, high-priced bottles. One year there was a drought. The river shrank from the banks, and many of the springs dried up. Ellis's spring seemed to grow stronger. Every day flocks of people come and ask for water. Mrs. Ellis offered to sell it, but the people couldn't afford her prices. Instead, they crept back at night, trampling over her land, sending clouds of dust in the air. Lying in bed, Mrs. Ellis could hear the chain rattling up and down, pulling bucket after bucket of water. She was fuming. They came back one night to find there was a lid over the well with a lock. The people had to leave thirsty, their throats parched, and search for water elsewhere. Under the ground, the spring kept bubbling, feeding water into the well. There was no one to take away any of the water. It bubbled higher and higher, until, eventually, it reached the lid. When it reached the lid, that was obviously chained and locked down at the top of the well, the lid was enough to keep people from the water, but it couldn't keep the water from the people. The water lifted the lid, tightening the chains. It trickled over the top and down the sides of the wall, slowly at first, and then a force grew greater. The lid began to rattle. The chains strained as the water poured through the gaps, and the pressure built beneath the lid. At last, a chain link snapped, and the water erupted upwards, sending the lid flying into the sky. In the morning, the people looked out of their windows to discover a brand new lake, sparkling and glimmering under the sun. They ran down with their buckets and bowls and drank their fill. There was no sign of Mrs. Ellis, her cottage, or the well. They named the mere after the woman whose selfishness had created it. Mrs. Ellis Mere. Ellis Mere. They never did find Mrs. Ellis, but some have seen her since. She lives in the mere, prowling around the edges, trying to keep the water for herself. The long years in the water had made her hair long and tangled, straggly like pondweed. Her nails had grown long, sharp, and twisted. Her teeth are green with pond algae. She waits close to the water's edge, just below the surface, ready to pounce and drag any strangers down, down, and down, never to see the surface again. As the story goes, there have been a few, children mostly, who managed to tear themselves free from the clutches and run screaming back home. Not knowing the story of Mrs. Ellis, they told of long, straggly hair and green, hungry teeth, and gave her the name Jenny Greenteeth. Even today, children are warned not to go too close to the water's edge, for fear of Jenny Greenteeth. The end. Sounds like a mermaid to me, and I'm not sure why she ended up in that state, unless she accidentally locked herself in well, which I can't see that happening. So she must have drowned. I don't know. Never really says. Interesting though. Thank you for listening. Please hit that like, share if you can, and if you've not yet subscribed, then please do so because it does really help. Many